Welcome to the Breakaway USA show, the show where you arm yourself with the tools to fight this woke degradation of American traditions and American cultures. My name is Fabian. We have David Kate and Gentry Jeevers with us as always. And today we have a very special watch party that you are going to get a lot of edification from because we have public enemy number one of the socialist, Argentina's new president, Javier Milei, at the World Economic Forum inside of the Lion's Den, being introduced by the devil Klaus Schwab himself. And everybody was expecting this to happen, but nobody knew what he was going to talk about. Was he going to throw them under the bus being in their house? Was he going to go against the globalist elite? Or was he going to fall in line? Because people thought that he might be a deep plant, that he might be controlled opposition. I'm excited this happened. What do you guys think about what happened today?
I'm so excited for it because, I'm with you. It seems like a lot of us were skeptical because of the relationships he was making. Is he going to go to this World Economic Forum and is he going to, cave into this globalist agenda, or is he going to maintain the rhetoric that we've seen this entire time? So it was just phenomenal to see what I've seen so far from this speech. I'm excited to see the entire thing. But yeah, no, it's definitely a relief to see at least Argentina to start to stand up against this huge agenda that they're trying to push onto us.
I'm the same way. There was a couple questions about him after he got elected because it surfaced that he had been previously part of the WEF. But I think he's making all the right enemies and he's saying and doing all the right things. And I bet you that Argentina is going to be the better for it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and I think that it's going to have some influence on other parts of the region. You have Brazil falling for a socialist dictatorship, honestly, right now, run by a mobster. This guy was convicted, he was in jail, and then now he's running the country. And Argentina almost seems like I hate to say it, like this virus that may start to infect the regions around it in a good way, and to start to push this, populist agenda again, this power of the people, that you represent the people, not interest and global interest, especially because in America we may fall under the deep state control of things, but these other countries, they're falling under the globalist agenda, they're falling under the control of globalists. So it would be really interesting to see how this plays out. He kind of stuck a big middle finger to Klaus Schwab right there, and the entire globalist elite, people come into this World Economic Forum. So it's really, really great to see. And I really hope that it starts to impact the regions around it.
There's a book by Malcolm Gladwell called The Tipping Point. And if you read it, he talks about how ideas are spread. And one of the first things he talks about is viruses and kind of how there's a tipping point in any society where a virus or an idea hits critical mass. I think we're really, really, really close to that with Argentina doing its thing, with Trump doing his thing with the primaries right now. I just saw a poll that he's up 16% in New Hampshire, which is unbelievable. Trump is up 16% in New Hampshire in the primaries. We're seeing Holland, right? The new Dutch parliament looks fantastic. There's a ton of countries in Europe that are starting to fight back. I've been seeing a whole bunch of Polish revolutionaries hitting the streets, which I think is amazing. So there's a tipping point, and I think we're going to witness it in our history.
We need more people like the Italian Prime Minister,
right?
Giorgia Meloni. That's what they need.
There's also a scene from the movie A Bug's Life, right, where the locusts are talking about how the ants are sheep, but the ants outnumber them, and they're actually stronger than them, and they can actually work together. And I think that scene, I mean, I'll probably post that on my Instagram later tonight too, but that scene, I think, really shows where we are as the world, not only as a country. So
yeah.
I think books predicting all of this time right now is so important for us all to read. Like 1984 is perfect for what's going on right now. Animal Farm is perfect for what's going on right now. So, it's got to get into these books and see what's going on there. But let's get it rolling, Fabian.
Yeah. And without further ado, here is the stud of all studs. Today, he's a stud of the day. I think Gentry was a stud yesterday, and David was a stud before that. But today we have Javier Milei, the ultimate stud of the day for January 17th, 2024. Let us see what he said.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's for me a great honor to welcome Javier Milei. As you know, he's a freely elected president of Argentina, and it's actually your first trip to a foreign country after you have been elected. First, congratulations for your election, and congratulations also to your sister, who managed your election campaign. I think you, sometimes people would say with more radical methods, but you introduce a new spirit to Argentina, making Argentina much more related to free enterprise, to entrepreneurial activities, also to bring Argentina back to the rule of law. So we have a very extraordinary person among us.
Okay. What do you think about that intro? Because I actually didn't hear the intro before. I skipped over it. He's kind of praising him.
It's interesting that he's saying, I hope that Argentina returns to the rule of law, when you know these people prey on chaos, right? They want destabilization. So I think that he's just like getting ready for what's about to happen. I feel like he knows what's about to come.
Well, the audience too, they're not like they don't have their heads in the sand. They know what's about to happen. It's a little bit surprising that he was even invited to go speak.
That's what I keep asking myself. Why? Why? Like, did Klaus really not think? I actually spoke to my buddy about this. The only thing that I can think of is that Klaus thought, I can humble this guy. I can make him mine. If I bring him to Davos and he sees all the extravagances that I have, all the power, all the people here, he might cower in his boots and change his message. I don't know. That's the only thing I can think of. Why else would you bring someone who's completely the opposite of what you believe and what you want?
Let me tell you why, actually. And I saw this from the Daily Mail. So every time that they go to the Davos convention, all the prostitution, fancy escort services are fully booked, right? And we've seen Javier Milei have a lot of fun, right? So they're thinking maybe they can somehow get him into some scenario where they can later blackmail him, because, you know, I mean, like you're saying, why in the heck would they invite him for this? So it's my only other thought.
I mean, I don't disagree with that at all. I think you're spot on. Jeez.
It's really interesting.
Today, and of course we are all eager to listen to you. And again, a very cordial welcome to the World Economic Forum.
Look at that smile.
He knows what's about to happen.
Short, sweet, and to the point. That introduction was amazing.
Turn on the captions. Those glasses.
He's such a rock star.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. Today, I'm here to tell you that the Western world is in danger. And it is endangered because those who are supposed to have to defend the values of the West are co-opted by a vision of the world that inexorably leads to socialism and thereby to poverty. Unfortunately, in recent decades, motivated by some well-meaning individuals willing to help others, and others motivated by the wish to belong to a privileged class,
he just said something really important. He basically said why people are duped into this socialistic, neo-feudalistic type of ideology. And he basically labeled it out. Let me replay that little 5-second clip.
Main leaders willing to, motivated by some well-meaning individuals willing to help others, and others motivated by the wish to belong to a privileged class.
Wow. So essentially what he's saying here is that people inherently want to be part of the elite class, and so they're willing to follow the elites because they think that will get them to be part of the caste.
It's like the boys club, basically.
Yeah, classic liberal philosophy right there.
Wow.
I like that he prefaced it like that, because it's almost saying, like, I understand why you're here, because either you're a good person or you want to fit in with these people. So
Mhm.
he's kind of saying, hey, like, I know what's going on, which I
Mhm.
like.
Mhm.
Main leaders of the Western world have abandoned the model of freedom for different versions of what we call collectivism. We're here to tell you that collectivist experiments are never the solution to the problems that afflict the citizens of the world. Rather, they are the root cause. Do believe me, no one better placed than us, Argentines, to testify to these 2 points. When we adopted the model of freedom back in 1860, in 35 years, we became a leading world power. And when we embraced collectivism over the course of the last 100 years, we saw how our citizens started to become systematically impoverished, and we dropped to spot number 140 globally. But before having the discussion, it would first be important for us to take a look at the data that demonstrate why free enterprise capitalism is not just the only possible system to end world poverty, but also that it's the only morally desirable system to achieve this. If we look at the history of economic progress,
I really like how he did this because he's going to get into facts and numbers. Now, he is an economist, if you didn't know, anyone listening, but he's going to get into why capitalism is better and what it's done for us before he gets into the other stuff, which I really like that he did that because he's proving his point at this point.
Absolutely.
So this, like, what he's saying right here is the antithesis of what the World Economic Forum and what the left and these Marxists and socialists are saying, because everyone's trying to cast capitalism, free market enterprise as the devil, right? It keeps people down, like all this kind of stuff. But he's literally speaking, he's not speaking to the choir here. He's speaking to the depths of hell. I don't know what the opposite of speaking to the choir is, right? But he's getting outside of the echo chamber and speaking truth to power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's important to also note that, like, he's like you said, Fabian, he's starting with laying out the true problem, and collectivism that's Marxism for you. That it's the pure socialist. The result of it essentially is grouping you into collectivism. So I love that he's starting that out because that's what Latin America has experienced so long, or South America, Latin America. They've experienced these state-run enterprises that are just essentially collectivism in an economic form or whatever. So he's laying out that it's been a huge problem and it's time to see a change for it. So
Yeah. Drain the swamp,
So
baby.
the audience here, do you think that everybody knows that they're trying to trick the world, or do you think that some people are duped into trying to fit in with the cool kids?
I think it's a little bit of both.
Mhm.
Definitely.
Because if it's half and half, then his words will land. But if it's just people trying to dupe the world,
Yeah.
then his words won't land. But I don't think it's in vain either way, because we're all seeing it and we're rooting for him.
Yeah. Well, there's definitely an element of self-preservation with these people that attend this conference. Even though like the CEOs of all these airlines that are doing this DEI stuff, they know it's killing their business, but you also know that you need to post quarterly results that are positive for your company. Otherwise, you're going to get ousted, and your job and your livelihood depends on that, and your status for that matter. So, do you allow your company to go into to turn into crap, but you have access to all these BlackRock ESG types of credit lines and funds, so you can make the accounting look like your company's doing well, but when in reality you're making zero money. But the way that you shield that is by clever accounting tricks and getting loans and things like that. So I think there's definitely an element of self-preservation with these people. And someone like him that's just saying this, what maybe probably what they really feel inside is going to allow them, or rather give them the ability to speak out even more or be even more fearless than they have been before.
Yeah, I agree with Fabian. And you also have to remember, I mean, for a lot of these people, it's actually attractive, most of this rhetoric and these ideas and these perspectives and all these different things that they want to usher in. So I think half of them are quite literally ideologically driven to this. They've been demoralized. They've been taught this from the very beginning. And I hate to say the word privilege, but they probably were grown privileged in a sense, in a bubble where social justice was at its framework. So
Yep.
yeah,
All right.
it's an interesting crowd.
Yeah, it really is. And at the end, I'm so glad you said that, because at the end, you're going to see the reaction of the crowd when he's done. I don't want to say anything beyond that, but just we'll wait for it.
And see how between the year 0 and the year 1800 approximately, world per capita GDP practically remained constant throughout the whole reference period. If you look at the graph of the evolution of economic growth throughout the history of humanity, you would see a hockey stick graph, an exponential function that remained constant for 90% of the time, and which was exponentially triggered starting in the 19th century. The only exception to this history of stagnation was in the late 15th century with the discovery of the American continent. But for this exception, throughout the whole period between the year 0 and the year 1800, global per capita GDP stagnated. Now, it's not just that capitalism brought about an explosion in wealth from the moment it was adopted as an economic system. But also, if you look at the data, what you will see is that growth continues to accelerate throughout the whole period. And throughout the whole period between the year 0 and the year 1800, the per capita GDP growth rate remained stable at around 0.02% annually, so almost no growth. Starting in the 19th century, with the Industrial Revolution, the compound annual growth rate was 0.66%. And at that rate, in order to double per capita GDP, you would need some 107 years. Now, if you look at the period between the year 1900 and the year 1950, the growth rate accelerated to 1.66% a year. So you no longer need 107 years to double per capita GDP, but 66. And if you take the period between 1950 and the year 2000, you will see that the growth rate was 2.1%. Again, the CAGR, which would mean that in only 33 years, we could double the world's per capita GDP. This trend, far from stopping, remains well alive today. If we take the period between the year 2000 and 2023, the growth rate again accelerated to 3% a year, which means that we could double world per capita GDP in just 23 years. That said, when you look at per capita GDP since the year 1800 and until today, what you will see is that after the Industrial Revolution, global per capita GDP multiplied by over 15 times, which meant a boom in growth that lifted 90% of the global population out of poverty. We should remember that by the year 1800, about 95% of the world's population lived in extreme poverty, and that figure dropped to 5% by the year 2020, prior to the pandemic. The conclusion is obvious. Far from being the cause of our problems, free trade capitalism as an economic system is the only instrument we have to end hunger, poverty, and extreme poverty across our planet.
Here he goes.
The empirical evidence is unquestionable. Therefore, since there is no doubt that free enterprise capitalism is superior in productive terms, the left-wing doxer has attacked capitalism, alleging matters of morality, saying, that's what the detractors claim, that it's unjust. They say that capitalism is evil because it's individualistic, and that collectivism is good because it's altruistic, of course, with the money of others. So they therefore advocate for social justice. But this concept, which in the developed world became...
I wish we had like a direct shot into Klaus Schwab's face right now, because this is
be
like his
nice.
biggest nightmare right here. This is like Trump, but more than Trump in his face right here. And you know he doesn't like what he's talking about, because their whole idea about these state-run enterprises, these legal mafias that they have in Latin America and South America, is they're able to control everything. They're able to get their DEIs and their woke shit through them without no problem. And with the free capitalism, honestly, free market capitalism, you can't control that. So he's sitting there and he's sweating. He's like, oh crap.
Yeah.
So you can really tell that this guy knows his stuff, because he's using the rule of 72 to figure out when and how the economy can double. If you don't know the rule of 72, go look it up. My dad, he's a wealth manager, and he's like he talks about that all the time, right? And when you look at America and you look at like even just the bottom wages, right? Like if you look at some of these states, like I think in Mississippi, like the median income is like 35%, or sorry, not 35%, 35,000, right? And that's considered like bottom of the barrel, like your poverty class in America. But if you look at the quality of life that these guys have, who are living like this, I mean, they have a roof over their head, they probably have a TV, they probably have a car, they have access to a grocery store, which, by the way, if you think about how unbelievable a grocery store is compared to like 100 years ago, that's like an unbelievable feat, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Plus, if you look at their income based on the rest of the world, right? It's not even a comparison, right?
Yep.
Whenever I go travel overseas, these guys are making like a couple bucks a day,
Yeah,
maybe.
exactly.
Maybe like in Indonesia, like a good day was like $7-8.
Yep. Gentry, and what's crazy too is that America doesn't have a true free market competition. I mean, with the amount of government regulations and there's restrictions and everything like that, and the amount of government intervention in terms of bailouts, you don't
Mhm.
actually have full free market competition. And yet it's still way better than anything that exists in these other
You
countries
know what's
because
funny is David, he's literally going to talk about exactly what you just said.
Really?
Yeah, he's
Really?
about to get to it, which is great because
Perfect.
it's absolutely true, and he gets into the theory of that,
Let's roll it.
and he uses that as another argument or another point on why he's right and why the WEF is wrong.
He probably read a lot of Ayn Rand because she talks a lot about this. So
Oh, all right, let's get back into it.
In recent times. In my country has been a constant in political discourse for over 80 years. The problem is that social justice is not just, and it doesn't contribute either to the general well-being. Quite on the contrary, it's an intrinsically unfair idea because it's violent. It's unjust because the state is financed through tax, and taxes are collected coercively. Or can any one of us say that they voluntarily pay taxes, which means that the state is financed through coercion, and that the higher the tax burden, the higher the coercion, and the lower the freedom. Those who promote social justice, the advocates, start with the idea that the whole economy is a pie that can be shared differently. But that pie is not a given. It's wealth that is generated in what Israel Kirzner, for instance, calls a market discovery process. If the goods or services offered by a business are not wanted, the business will fail unless it adapts to what the market is demanding. If they make a good quality product at an attractive price, they will do well and produce more. So the market is a discovery process in which the capitalists will find the right path as they move forward. But if the state punishes capitalists when they're successful and gets in the way of the discovery process, they will destroy their incentives. And the consequence is that they will produce less, the pie will be smaller, and this will harm society as a whole. Collectivism, by inhibiting these discovery processes and hindering the appropriation of discoveries, ends up binding the hands of entrepreneurs and prevents them from offering better goods and services at a better price. So how come that academia, international organizations, economic theory, and politics demonize an economic system that has not only lifted out of extreme poverty 90% of the world's population, but has continued to do this faster and faster? And this is morally superior and just. Thanks to free trade capitalism, it is to be seen that the world is now living its best moment. Never in all of mankind's or humanity's history has there been a time of more prosperity than today. This is true for all. The world of today has more freedom, is richer, is more peaceful and prosperous. And this is particularly true for countries that have more freedom and have economic freedom and respect the property rights of individuals, because countries that have more freedom are 12 times richer than those that are repressed. And the lowest decile in terms of distribution in free countries are better off than 90% of the population of repressed countries. And poverty is 25 times lower, and extreme poverty is 50 times lower. And citizens in free countries live 25% longer than citizens in repressed countries. Now, what is it that we mean when we talk about libertarianism? And let me quote the words of the greatest authority on freedom in Argentina, Professor Alberto Venegas Lich Jr., who says that libertarianism is the unrestricted respect for the life project of others, based on the principle of non-aggression, in defense of the right to life, liberty, and property. Its fundamental institutions being private property, markets free from state intervention, free competition, the division of labor, and social cooperation, as part of which success is achieved only by serving others with goods of better quality or at a better price. In other words, capitalists, successful business people are social benefactors who, far from appropriating the wealth of others, contribute to the general well-being. Ultimately, a successful entrepreneur is a hero. And this is the model that we are advocating for the Argentina of the future, a model based on the fundamental principles of libertarianism, the defense of life, of freedom, and of property. Now, if free enterprise capitalism and economic freedom have proven to be extraordinary instruments to end poverty in the world, and we are now at the best time in the history of humanity, it is worth asking why I say that the West is in danger. And I say this precisely because in those of our countries that should defend the values of the free market, private property, and the other institutions of libertarianism, sectors of the political and economic establishment, some due to mistakes in the theoretical framework and others due to a greed for power are under.
Okay, so this is where he's going to start kind of telling them why they're wrong. So he gave stats, and then he talked about what it's produced and why it's produced it. And now he's going to tell the people why you may. He's doing it in a nice way, but he's basically saying why what you think should be the way that the system is ran is incorrect.
I like how he painted the entrepreneurs as heroes, and instead of appropriating, the commonwealth, that they're actually providing a service to society, so they should be compensated by that. And he prefaced it by saying, if a service isn't needed by the market, then that business will fail.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was also a snub at all this bureaucracy that they're building that he also has in Argentina. Like, if it's not necessary, it shouldn't succeed.
Oh, interesting.
I like that. And I like that he's addressing taxes, because if you think about it, that's part of their collectivism, is trying to take money from you, hard-earned money that you've made, and throwing it at these social justice programs, rather than imagine, like, if you had the self-interest, because of your own greed, not greed, but like your own self-interest, to fund, let's say, a road in your community because you understand that that's something that you and your community actually need. And that's kind of like what he's talking about on an economical scale as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Foundations of libertarianism, opening up the doors to socialism and potentially condemning us to poverty, misery, and stagnation. It should never be forgotten that socialism is always and everywhere an impoverishing phenomenon that has failed in all countries where it's been tried out. It's been a failure economically, socially, culturally, and it also murdered over 100 million human beings. The essential problem in the West today is not just that we need to come to grips with those who, even after the fall of the Berlin Wall and the overwhelming empirical evidence, continue to advocate for impoverishing socialism. But there's also our own leaders, thinkers, and academics who, relying on a misguided theoretical framework, undermine the fundamentals of the system that has given us the greatest expansion of wealth and prosperity in our history. The theoretical framework to which I refer is that of neoclassical economic theory, which designs a set of instruments that unwillingly or without meaning to ends up serving the intervention by the state, socialism, and social degradation. The problem with neoclassicals is that the model they fell in love with does not map reality, so they put down their mistakes to supposed market failures rather than reviewing the premises of the model on the pretext of.
David, here's where he's going to address that point that you made about regulation. And
I love the point he's making here, though, because he said that the neoclassical model of economics isn't actually based in reality. Right? It's all this theory, and I think one of the things that the academics forget about is human nature, which is a wild thing to forget if you're an academic.
Yeah.
And
they intentionally do it, I feel like, though,
Yeah.
In a sense, intentionally, in terms of, like, they understand that it's a huge factor, but they completely ignore it in the benefit, just to push this stuff out, honestly.
Yeah, and a lot of times they're dealing with a lot of theoretical things, just like a lot of the neo-Marxists did, without actually living in the real world and understanding and taking that into consideration, like you guys were saying. Because as one of these people, you're in universities all the time. You're not out in the regular world doing regular jobs and dealing with regular things. You're on this ivory tower trying to pass judgment on what you think, or on what you know is to be correct, without having real world experience. And I think that's part of the message that he's also addressing, being that he's addressing the most elite of the elite at the most elite place in the world. It's all these underhanded comments that he's slipping in there.
Well, of course, these elites of the elites want to usher in socialism, right? Because they're going to end up fine, and they're going to wipe out the entire upper to bottom middle class and just create a two-tier society, the elites and the fucking peasants, right?
Yep.
So
Neo-feudalism.
Right, because
exactly,
because socialism, communism, whatever ism you want to put in there, it only benefits the elites.
Yeah.
Only. It puts everybody else in poverty.
That's it.
The Bolsheviks became the elites. That's how it always is in these communist revolutions. So, yeah.
Yep.
Supposed market failure, regulations are introduced which only create distortions in the price system, prevent economic calculus, and therefore also prevent saving, investment, and growth. This problem lies mainly in the fact that not even supposedly libertarian economists understand what the market is, because if they did understand, it would quickly be seen that it's impossible for there to be something along the lines of market failures. The market is not a mere graph describing a curve of supply and demand. The market is a mechanism of social cooperation where you voluntarily exchange ownership rights. Therefore, based on this definition, talking about a market failure is an oxymoron. There are no market failures. If transactions are voluntary, the only context in which there can be a market failure is if there is coercion. And the only one that is able to coerce generally is the state, which holds a monopoly on violence. Consequently, if someone considers that there is a market failure, I would suggest that they check to see if the state intervention involved. And if they find that that's not the case, I would suggest that they check again, because obviously there's a mistake. Market failures do not exist. And
wait.
Oh my God,
This
this guy's
is
amazing.
This is unbelievable. So Tucker Carlson, I forget which interview it was, but he basically said that the U.S. is not a capitalist country anymore because the government literally touches everything. Like you can't start a business without registering it with the government, and then you have to pay an insane amount of taxes, and it's stifling this growth. It's driving prices up. It's making stuff harder and harder to get, and it's disincentivizing a lot of people to actually go and start businesses because why when I heard that interview, I was like, why are we registering our businesses with the government? That doesn't seem like freedom at all. But it's commonplace because we've all said, oh, we got to pay our taxes, we got to do this, we got to do that, and it's just like, well, why? Like, why isn't anyone like asking the question why?
Yeah.
And I think maybe it's because it's too revolutionary, and it was just the way things are done. But the way things are done, the way things have been going is towards total chaos. And then we get a government that instead of investing in our infrastructure and roads and defense and national security, the classic example is like the border. It's a blaring example, right? They're sending our money to Ukraine and they're lining their own pockets. And so like at some point, it just doesn't make sense to engage in that system anymore. Why are we giving our public servants, by the way, there are public servants, we elected them. Why are we giving them the power to shut down our business if we don't pay taxes, or even take away our house, the house that we own, if we don't pay property taxes?
Perfect example. I had an LLC that I never used. I formed it. It was going to be something. It never was anything. No financial transactions passed through that LLC. 3 years later, I get a letter from the Los Angeles City tax revenue collection something, and they said, hey, we saw that you had this LLC, and there's a Los Angeles city tax. So if you do in city in the business of Los Angeles, you have to pay an extra tax, and they're charging me $3,600. So which is basically over $1,000 a year. And I said, okay, well, there was never anything generated in this. First of all, I didn't know there was an extra tax that I had to do if I did business in this city. So imagine me never wanting to ever make another LLC in California or run a business that's registered anywhere in the state of Los Angeles. I moved that to Texas. So now guess what? Texas is getting the benefit of that. So it just goes along to what you said. It doesn't make any sense.
It's part of their plan to, control the market, because their idea of a free market competition, or our idea of a free market competition, will not thrive for these elites. And the biggest thing too is that we are a cushion for them, because when these companies that are too big to fail, which is an absurd term, fail, we are the ones that bail them out. And we bail them out to
Great
the
point.
point of where we end up getting screwed over. So they monopolize the market. And when they screw up because of their ill behaviors or whatever it is, we have to bail them out. And then we get screwed because of bailing them out. 2008 and 9 is the perfect example of that.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. That's a great point.
Mhm.
Absolutely. All right. Let's
keep
Example
going.
of these so-called market failures described by the neoclassicals are the concentrated structures of the economy. However, without increasing returns to scale functions, whose counterpart are the concentrated structures of the economy, we couldn't possibly explain economic growth since the year 1800 until today. Isn't this interesting? Since the year 1800,
Good
onwards,
pause there.
with population multiplying by 8 or 9 times, per capita GDP grown by over 15 times. So there are growing returns, which took extreme poverty from 95% to 5%. However, the presence of growing returns involves concentrated structures, what we would call a monopoly. How come then that something that has generated so much well-being for the neoclassical theory is a market failure? Neoclassical economists think outside of the box. When the model fails, you shouldn't get angry with reality, but rather with the model and change it. The dilemma faced by the neoclassical model is that they say they wish to perfect the functioning of the market by attacking what they consider to be failures. But in so doing, they don't just open up the doors to socialism, but also go against economic growth. An example, regulating monopolies, destroying their profits and destroying growing returns automatically would destroy economic growth. In other words, whenever you want to correct a supposed market failure inexorably, as a result of not knowing what the market is, or as a result of having fallen in love with a failed model, you are opening up the doors to socialism and condemning people to poverty. However, faced with the theoretical...
Is he in favor of monopolies?
Check this out, Gentry. Think about this. In a true free market competition, there's not a company large enough that can corner the market in order to monopolize it. It's
without intervention. Exactly.
Without intervention. It's only when there's intervention and market regulation that you can get that. Now, I don't say that about scarce products, right? Like resources and stuff like that. Like federal government should definitely be able to regulate, let's say, like whatever it takes to create like nukes, right? I always forget, like uranium, right? They should be able to regulate that, but like if the government was not included in the picture, then a true free market competition would not allow a single company to corner the market.
Yeah, because these banks would have failed already. Like back in 08, they would have been done. And then arising, out of the ashes, you'd have smarter people or people that understood what the hell happened and wouldn't do that again.
Yeah.
Make something
harmful, and empirical evidence that it has failed couldn't have been otherwise. The solution to be proposed by collectivists is not greater freedom, but rather greater regulation, which creates a downward spiral of regulations until we're all poorer, and the life of all of us depends on a bureaucrat sitting in a luxury office. Given the dismal failure of collectivist models and the undeniable advances in the free world, socialists were forced to change their agenda. They left behind the class struggle based on the economic system and replaced this with other supposed social conflicts which are just as harmful to life as a community and to economic growth. The first of these new battles was the ridiculous and unnatural fight between man and woman. Libertarianism already provides for equality of these sexes. The cornerstone of our creed says that all humans are created equal, that we all have the same unalienable rights granted by the Creator, including life, freedom, and ownership. All that this radical feminism agenda has led to is greater state intervention to hinder the economic process, giving a job to bureaucrats who have not contributed anything to society. Examples, ministries of women or international organizations devoted to promoting this agenda. Another conflict presented by socialists is that of humans against nature, claiming that the
fact that they always usher in a new social justice reason of creating more government, like, oh, look, women inequality, let's create the Department of Women. What does that do? Make the government bigger again, more control, more regulations on things. And man, this guy is awesome. He sees it.
He sees it, and with his entire intersectionality, where not only now is it that you're, let's say you're a black woman, so you're oppressed, but you can also meet other intersections of other oppression. So you can also be a lesbian. So a black female lesbian has more oppression than just a black woman. And then if you're a trans lesbian or whatever that is, black, then there's layers of oppression. So at some point, if everyone has their own department, that's this insane bureaucracy that cannot, like, there is not enough money to appease all of these imaginary oppressions that people are getting because they're taking them to the extreme now. I think
But
that's
then,
kind of like,
but then let's make it personal too, because anytime you add a department to the government, it has to be funded, and the government doesn't create value.
exactly.
So we pay for that.
Yep.
Mhm.
And until I see like a white Christian male, department, I don't want to fund that.
Yep. And again, you have to remember this is your hard-earned money that they're taking to pour into this stuff rather than you voluntarily giving them money to better things in your community. I mean, yeah, I might not want to fund things that are happening in New York City. I want to see things that I can actually use. So, and that will lead to better things. That will lead to greater infrastructure in my county. And if everybody's under the same impression rather than this collectivist bullshit, then you're going to have fantastic infrastructure everywhere. That's the whole idea behind this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's why earlier he said the higher the taxes, the less freedom, the more coercion you need to collect more taxes, and the government is the person who coerces you. So he's tying that back in, which I think is really smart.
So there's a classic example from the Bible in Acts where people always look at it and say, "Oh, this is like a proof that socialism is actually like a Christian value." And it's because people gave, I think, 90% of what they had to the church, just to be able to support the growing church back then. But what they miss is it was voluntary.
Yeah.
It wasn't the government redistributing it. It was voluntary.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's why earlier he says, in the beginning of the speech where he's talking about private industry, he's saying you exchange your money for ownership, but you do that voluntarily rather than forcefully. And that's the entire difference between capitalism and communism, is one is forced and one is voluntary. That's it. It's
Exactly. And that's so important to remember, is the voluntary aspect of it. Because in Israel, it's founded by socialists essentially, because they didn't know anything better coming from Soviet Union mostly. And the kibbutzes to this day are founded on a socialist idea, and they thrive. Why? Because it's usually 100, 200, 300 people in there.
Mhm.
It will most likely work in that scenario, especially if it's voluntary. These people aren't being forced by the government to do this. They're coming to the kibbutz under the impression that socialism is fantastic. It works for them, voluntary. But they're literally ushering it on us, especially here in America, involuntarily, right?
exactly.
Protected at all costs, even going as far as advocating for population control mechanisms or the bloody abortion agenda. Unfortunately, these harmful ideas have taken a strong hold in our society. Neo-Marxists have managed to co-opt the common sense of the Western world, and this they have achieved by appropriating the media, culture, universities, and also international organizations. The latter case is the most serious one, probably, because these are institutions that have enormous influence on political and economic decisions of the countries that make up the multilateral organizations. Fortunately, there's more and more of us who are daring to make our voices heard, because we see that if we don't truly and decisively fight against these ideas, the only possible fate is for us to have increasing levels of state regulation, socialism, poverty, and less freedom, and therefore will be having worse standards of living. The West has unfortunately...
He talked about abortion and depopulation. I saw this post recently that they are pandering to women with this abortion issue, and they're lying and tricking them into thinking this is the only thing that matters to them. 4 votes. That's it. That's all they're doing. Because if you look at the effects of women who have gone through abortions, it is insane.
Yeah. Single issue voters.
It's so bad. Plus, they are raising taxes. They are not protecting the country. They're making it harder to live. Oh, but you can go kill your baby. They're literally giving away their future in so many ways.
It's literally, again, a social justice, like emotional appeal, right? And whatever way they can usher in more social justice is the different characteristics that they can have Marxism in, right? Race for critical race theory, feminist stuff with this abortion stuff, equality, blah blah blah. It's all under the same disguise, honestly. Anyway, it's like a funnel, right? Get them all there because it'll all funnel to collectivism, essentially. It's crazy.
It may sound ridiculous to suggest that the West has turned to socialism, but it's only ridiculous if you only limit yourself to the traditional economic definition of socialism, which says that it's an economic system where the state owns the means of production. This definition, in my view, should be updated in the light of current circumstances. Today, states don't need to directly control the means of production to control every aspect of the lives of individuals. With tools such as printing money, debt, subsidies, controlling the interest rate, price controls, and regulations to correct the so-called market failures, they can control the lives and fates of millions of individuals. This is how we come to the point where, by using different names or guises, a good deal of the generally accepted political offers in most Western countries are collectivist variants, whether they proclaim to be openly communists, fascists, Nazis, socialists, social democrats, national socialists, Democrat Christians, Christian Democrats, neo-Keynesians, progressive, populist, nationalists, or globalists. At bottom, there are no major differences. They all say that the state should steer all aspects of the lives of individuals. They all defend a model contrary to that one which led humanity to the most spectacular progress in its history. We have come here today to invite the rest of the countries in the Western world to get back on the path of prosperity, economic freedom, limited government, and unlimited respect for private property are essential elements for economic growth. And
he just said, let's get back to respecting people's private property. And he said, he's quoted John Locke a couple of times, life, liberty, and property, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the WEF's slogans is, by 2030, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy, right? And so I'm just now getting that, because that's a direct slap in the face to John Locke. That's a direct slap in the face to Thomas Jefferson, because he appropriated that when he said life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's literally the 2030 agenda is the antithesis of the founding of America.
Yep. And the opposite of that is literally like, this is pure Marxism, right? That's what Marxists wanted to do, is abolish property. Yep. I mean, they couldn't be more clear than that right now. Is that
it literally says it, yeah. It literally says what it is, and then WEF says exactly the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Ridiculous.
He also said an interesting thing, real before we keep going, is that he wants to bring back limited government. And I hear a lot of people always say small government, or and I'm like against small government, because the idea of not having the federal government there, in my opinion, is not. I like the institutions. They're just been corrupted and they're too big now. So reverting it back and bringing it back to just a limited form of government, that they're not able to have these restrictions and regulations, is so key. It's so important.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a good point.
No fantasy, nor is it an inescapable fate. But it's a reality that we Argentines know very well. We have lived through this. We have been through this. Because, as I said earlier, ever since we decided to abandon the model of freedom that had made us rich, we have been caught up in a downward spiral, as part of which we are poorer and poorer day by day. So this is something we have lived through, and we are here to warn you about what can happen if the countries in the Western world that became rich through the model of freedom stay on this path of servitude. The case of Argentina is an empirical demonstration that no matter how rich you may be, or how much you may have in terms of natural resources, or how skilled your population may be, or educated, or how many bars of gold you may have in the central bank, if measures are adopted that hinder the free functioning of markets, free competition, free price systems, if you hinder trade, if you attack private property, the only possible fate is poverty. Therefore, in concluding, I would like to leave a message for all business people here and for those who are not here in person but are following from around the world. Do not be intimidated.
Oh, here we go. Okay. This is
Is
my
this it?
personal favorite part. So he saved the best for last. As a true orator, true entertainer, he saved the best for last. So
All
he's
right.
gone through he's gone through all this. He's laid his claim, he's used facts, he's used everything under the sun. And now is where he's going to give people their call to action.
For those who are not here in person but are following from around the world, do not be intimidated either by the political class or by parasites who live off the state. Do not surrender to a political class that only wants to stay in power and retain its privileges. You are social benefactors. You're heroes. You're the creators of the most extraordinary period of prosperity we've ever seen. Let no one tell you that your ambition is immoral. If you make money, it's because you offer a better product at a better price, thereby contributing to general well-being. Do not surrender to the advance of the state. The state is not the solution. The state is the problem itself. You are the true protagonists of this story. And rest assured that as from today, Argentina is your staunch, unconditional ally. Thank you very much, and long live freedom. Damn it.
Yes.
Wow.
Let's go.
People are actually clapping.
That's okay. Sorry.
Oh.
Yes.
Are you
That's
kidding
what I
me?
was really surprised. Let's watch the last, because half the crowd looks like they were ecstatic and half the crowd was like, should I even clap? So yeah, this is.
Thank you very much, and long live freedom. Damn it.
Damn it.
Dude.
Oh my God.
Wow. Wow.
What an
Wow.
ending. He spoke truth to power, but like not just like local power or national power, multinational power. These are world leaders. These are the entrepreneurs. These are the people that control everything. And he just spit in their face. I mean, that guy is unbelievable.
That's why when I text you guys, I'm like, I'm surprised he walked out of there alive. Because that's
Oh my gosh.
now here's the other thing I was thinking about. Let's just say that he is a plant, right? Let's just say that in all of Klaus Schwab's wisdom, he allowed him to go on stage and just eviscerate them step by step. Okay. That message is still out there. You can't get that back. You can't put it back in the can once it's out. Done.
Right.
Over.
Right.
And if you're allowing him, if he's controlled opposition and you're allowing him to do that, it doesn't matter because the word's already out. The fire's already been lit.
Right.
That's why to me, it kind of tells me that he's not a psyop. He's not a controlled op.
Yeah, no, not at all. And again, I think that the reason he got there is because he chose his enemies so wisely, making these relationships where a lot of us were confused. I mean, like, what is he actually going to be? Is he going to stick to this rhetoric that he got that made him president of Argentina? Is he just faking this whole thing so he could get in control and cozy up next to these elites? No, he did the right thing. He got close to them, close enough to get invited to this thing, and then punched them in the face so that they literally would have had to like rip him off stage or pull some 2020 election type interference, you know, like, oh my God, water leak. We got to shut this thing down all of a sudden in order for this speech to not get out there. And I just commend him for it because it takes a lot of balls. And I think he's a man of balls to come up to the stage and say this, because this is completely against all globalist ideas, against Marxist ideas, which is what they're rooted in at this World Economic Forum.
Yeah, I think even if he is a plant, he's a great plant because that message is unbelievable. It's spot on. It's spot on to everything my dad taught me when I was younger. It's spot on to everything that I believe now about free markets and capitalism and prosperity. I mean, he's a G.
Well,
He's
you know what I was
G.
thinking about? We also don't know what he told them that he was going to talk about.
True.
Right? He was,
True.
and here's something weird. And I don't know if this is too out there woo-woo, but if you saw the video when he was getting on the commercial flight and when he was getting off, he had his little speech thing, right? His little, and he had it with him. So clearly he wants to keep it safe. We don't know if he made this deal and said, okay, I'm going to say this, went out there and was like, screw you, boom, hit him with it. So I was thinking about that. But the other thing that I also saw was the translator, he was translated pretty quickly. Okay.
True.
It was when Javier Milei looked up and started speaking off the cuff is when the translation seemed to get a little bit slower, which kind of tells me that he had a copy of the speech beforehand. But then
Yep.
again, we don't know how late he got that speech. We don't know at what time compared to when he went to speak. There's a lot of unknowns. But I would love to be a fly on the wall and find out how that happened.
I just can't believe that they allowed this speech to go on literally in Davos. I mean, wow. During World Economic Forum week. I mean, I'm just still shocked because this challenges every aspect of what the globalists are pushing on us. It challenges every narrative and pro argument you hear about socialism. It was beautiful, honestly.
So, Fabian, you said something, or maybe David, you said it, but you're surprised that he walked out of there. I think because he's made this speech and it's gone so viral that now he's protected. Because now they really can't kill him. They can't, you know.
They definitely can do stuff to his country to not let him survive. I'm curious what happened at the IMF meeting when he met with Bill Clinton, and because they have a lot of loans to the IMF. It's going to be very interesting. He has said things about shutting down the central bank. I mean, really, time will tell.
But with the advent of social media, if they do off him, it's going to be bedlam. Like all bets are off because everybody has their tinfoil hat on. Everyone's going to look to the WEF or the IMF or the central bank or whatever it is. And so, like, if you war game this out, it's not going to be good for their agenda if they go ahead and kill him. Just like it's not going to be good for the Democrats in America if they go ahead and kill Trump.
Yeah,
right?
no, I don't think that's the move. I think the move is to kill the economy so that you can say, look, all the stuff you said, not true, didn't work. Let us take over.
Here's what I've been seeing is that the Treasury has basically been kicking the can down the road, and they're going to artificially prop up the economy, and they're going to lower rates, and they're going to issue short-term bonds, and they're going to do all this stuff to make sure. And then after Trump gets elected, they're going to drop it. And then they're going to blame Trump, and it's going to be Trump's fault. It's not going to be Bidenomics. It's not going to be Janet Yellen. It's not going to be what's the guy's name from the Fed? Powell. It's not going to be Jay Powell, right? It's going to be Trump's fault.
It always is. It always is.
But I mean, overall, that was an incredible speech, and I don't think anyone saw that coming. I certainly didn't think he would go that hard. I thought it'd be a very tame version of what it was. But regardless, I'm glad it happened. It is all over social media. And like we said, it's lit a fire. You can't, the can has been opened. You can't put it back in. It's out there. They chose to live stream everything from WEF this year. So thank God they did, because they didn't have time to not let this out. And, we'll see what happens. But overall, definitely impressed. And I love where this is going.
Yeah. Wait, Fabian, can you look at the views on that video and see how many there are?
So this is from the direct World Economic Forum's site, and it has 122,000 views, and this is where everyone got their video from. But that video,
right? The video is going viral.
I can't even tell you. Yeah,
millions,
viral on Instagram, viral on Facebook.
About to be viral on YouTube.
Yep.
Yeah, no, it's again, it's going to resonate well with everybody.
For comparison, wow. So just for comparison, let me reshare this right before we get out of here, because I want you to just look at the difference of views that their other videos have compared to that video. So this is 8 hours ago, 2.6 views, 2.6K, 2.8K, 2.1K.
Mr. Climate Grifter.
985 views, 717 views, 13K. Okay. Even John Kerry, 2.2K. That one has so many more views. 122. What is it? 122,000, I think.
Yeah, that's what you said.
That is crazy.
Oh my gosh.
Their homepage video has 31,000 views.
That's wild.
Oh my God.
Unbelievable.
That's amazing.
You
Well-
love to see that. You love to see that. And like I was saying, it's going to resonate well with a lot of people because everybody feels the same grievances. Everybody understands what's too much government, too much regulations, intervention. So it's going to sit well with a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we were able to do this. And if you're watching, if you made it this far, that's the power of what's happening now. That's a populist counter to the revolution that is being propped up by these globalists. So I'm excited to see where it's going. It's been a great night, gentlemen. Any last words?
Go follow breakaway_USA.
That's right. Don't forget it.
Viva la Argentina.
All right. Yeah.
Good night.
Adios, guys.
All right.
Bye.
Also, Matt Kim's a grifter.